Welcome back to the show. If you're just joining us now, Agriculture Minister Gerry Ritz, an MP for Battlefords-Lloydminster, is in the hot seat. We're just about to talk about the Canadian Wheat Board. Now, you have moved to introduce legislation that will end the Canadian Wheat Board's monopoly this year. Now, the Canadian Wheat Board, not everyone is excited about this move. Obviously, you've also been accused of taking swipes at the Canadian Wheat Board. What do you say when you hear that?
Well, I don't think I've taken swipes at them. I have pointed out to them that the Canadian Wheat Board Act spells out certain things they can and cannot do. Some people have perceived that as going too far, but all I'm doing is reinforcing the fact that there is an act that they operate under. Having said that, within that same act, they're to report to me on a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. I've never seen one. In almost 4 years of being minister, I've never seen a report. So that leads me to wonder if they are producing this premium back to farmers, where is it? If they can't even prove it to me, if they won't show me the reports, how do they prove it to farmers other than saying constantly, yes, we give you this premium? But any farmer checking the markets and looking at the spot price here and there sees quite a spread between what the Wheat Board is offering and what they could get in a different market. Certainly you have to get into that market. Okay. And it's very simplistic to say I could sell all my grain for $12 because that's what it is in Montana today. That's not what we're basing this on. What we're basing it on is the fact that more and more farmers are growing canola, pulses, any other commodity but a Wheat Board commodity. The Wheat Board commodities, the wheat, the durum, and the barley are becoming rotational crops only, and our acreages are going down and down. We've lost 50% of our wheat and durum acres. We've lost 40-some% of our barley acres in the last decade. That's got to be turned around. As I said, there's a hungry world out there. Oats came out from under the board in '89. Since then, we now have 5 or 6 major processing facilities in Western Canada. We're not seeing that in the flour milling, the pasta plants, the malt plants. We need to see that. We need to see those jobs here in Western Canada. We need to send out a more finished product rather than just raw commodities. Transportation is a major cost for every farm. And if you can value add before it leaves Western Canada, of course, transportation becomes a lesser percentage of that overhead cost. So we know there's economies to build here. We know that the Wheat Board has not modernized to the same extent that farmers have modernized. They've become world-class marketers on their canola and their pulses. Why not on their wheat, durum, and barley?
So I guess farmers elect the Canadian Wheat Board, correct? So why hasn't...
10, 5 are appointed by the government.
So why hasn't the Canadian Wheat Board modernized then along with the farmers?
Well, that's a very good question, Whitney, and I look at the low turnout in the designated areas that they elect these directors from. You know, they're lucky if they get out a 35% voter turnout. Okay. And so it takes very small numbers. Most people have just said, I don't want to take part in this at all. I've just distanced myself completely from the Wheat Board. I want nothing to do with it. I'm not even going to vote. So they've let this happen to a certain extent, you could say. But having said that, you know, it's all about rights and responsibilities. Every farmer takes on the responsibility of millions of dollars worth of machinery, land, equipment, you know, and all those types of things. They have to have the right to market their product.
So, I mean, the Canadian Wheat Board has been in place for 75 years, and you're saying they have to have the right to market their own product. Why has it been in place for I mean, it's been working for 75 years.
Well,
Why
I guess
the
question is working to what degree? Certainly there are farmers, there's 10% on this end of the scale that say the Wheat Board has saved me. I need the Wheat Board. I can't live without it. We're trying to make sure there is a Wheat Board-like entity there for them to pool their commodities. There's 10% on the other end of the scale that say the Wheat Board is costing me huge money out of my farming operation. Then there's the rest in the middle, the other 75-80% that say, I just want a better return. I want to pick when I sell my commodity, not just to who and for how much, but when I sell it, so that my business plan becomes more fulsome.
Now, one of the Wheat Board's sort of mottos, I guess, is that they will get the best return. So how do farmers get better returns?
Well, they claim to get the best return, but there's a lot of studies out there that say they're not. There was one just put out by C.D. Howe, and of course the Wheat Board advocates say it's bunk, it's not based on anything scientific, but it is based on some pretty good premises that with the lowering commodity quantity in Canada, we're no longer a price maker, we're a price taker, the same as anybody else out in the world. The board does an excellent job with the high end, you know, the number one hard spring wheat for high protein for good flour, and they do the same thing with durum because we are the major durum producer in the world. So they do okay with those two commodities. They've done a terrible job with barley, they've done a terrible job with any of the feeds or lesser grades of wheat and durum.
So I guess just last question here, we'll just sort of wrap this up. Earlier we were seeing headlines that says you want to abolish the Canadian Wheat Board. Now you're sort of, you know, maybe taking a more modernized stance on it, saying that, you know, maybe there will be one in place for that lower 10%. What do you hope to see going forward?
Well, our premise has always been a dual market. Okay. We've always said the farmers that want to market their own commodity should be able to do that, and the ones that want to pool their commodity should be able to do that. So we're trying to work with the board that we can set up a new facility that will allow pooling, and you know, the ability for these farmers that say that they need the economies of scale will have that available to them. So we're in the throes of doing that, trying to map that way forward. I'm hopeful that the Wheat Board will come to their senses and recognize that the future is ahead of them, not behind them, and start to work with us on setting up that new entity.
Well, looking forward to following this issue, Minister Ritz, and thank
As
you so
am I.
much for being on the show today.
My pleasure, always.
This has been our conversation with Agriculture Minister and MP for Battlefords-Lloydminster, Gerry Ritz.